facing those new challenges. BRAZ-TESOL was founded in 1986, and it is Brazil's largest association of teachers of English to speakers of other languages. It is a nonprofit organization with a membership of over 2,000 professionals. BRAZ-TESOL is an affiliate of TESOL International, IATEFL, and a member of the Southern Cone TESOL. If you join BRAZ-TESOL, you will becoming a member, you will have exclusive benefits as a member and a partner. So please join us in this wonderful community. It is my great honor to introduce the first speaker of our series of talks tonight. We've been trying to bring him to Ribeirão Preto for a long time, and unfortunately, the circumstances prevented him from being here with us in person, although he's here face to face.
Yes.
But I'm sure there'll be many other opportunities for you to come here in the future, Igor, and we'll certainly have a chance to go to Pinguim together to celebrate BRAZ-TESOL and your presence here in Ribeirão Preto.
Certainly.
Igor Cavalcanti is a teacher trainer, and a CELTA tutor, having worked on CELTA courses based in São Paulo, Istanbul, Prague, and Barcelona, both face-to-face and online. Has been in ELT for over 2 decades, and his main interests in the area include extensive reading, phonology, and language development for teachers, about which he's written English para Professor and Inglês para Professor and Inglês para Professor 2. Igor is currently the president of BRAZ-TESOL National Association, a founding member of BRAZ-TESOL's Teacher Development SIG, and above all, Igor is Nicole's daddy. Igor Cavalcanti, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us tonight and for kindly accepting our invitation to start our series of talks for BRAZ-TESOL Ribeirão Preto chapter.
Always, thank you. All right, well, thank you. I felt that was beautiful. I couldn't agree more. I mean, teachers are wonderful, and it's really a privilege. It's an honor to be a teacher, and to be a member of this team of people who have to adapt and are adapting all the time and doing the best they can. All right, thanks. Thank you very much. And definitely, I was going to be in Ribeirão Preto today. Definitely. I mean, if the situation were different, this was definitely one of the events I was going to participate live. But very soon, hopefully, 2021, we're going to be able to be together, everybody. Can I start? Can I start with the slides? Can I begin? Yeah. All right.
All right, Igor, so I'm sorry, just for everybody to know, for us to make it feasible, we'll be discussing the questions that our audience will certainly have today after you finish. Unfortunately, it is not possible to cover all the questions that will come, and there will be certainly many questions coming, but we'll try to do our best, okay? So if you have any questions, Igor will give you 10, 15 minutes, so then we can share ideas and ask your questions.
Definitely.
Thank you, Igor.
No, my pleasure. And yes, I'm going to try to finish by 9:15 or something, so that we actually have time to deal with questions. Yeah, I can't promise because I'm terrible with timing, but I'll do my best. All right, so here we go. I'm going to start sharing my screen. I want to start by saying that it's the first time I have talked about this. This is a new talk. This is a new topic for me. I have been talking about this here and there for a long time as part of CELTA courses and trying to get teachers to think of some of these questions. But I've never actually done a whole talk on this topic. So this is brand new. So it's exciting to be talking about something that I've never addressed for a number of minutes non-stop. So anyway, I would appreciate the feedback as well. At the end of this talk, I'm going to give you my email address, Instagram, etc. So by all means, feel free to reach out if you want to discuss anything in more detail. Okay, so let's start. So fostering learner autonomy, helping students become more independent, helping students perhaps need us a little bit less. So in the abstract, what? I know, I've been participating in these events for a long time to know that most people don't actually read abstracts. They know the title of the talk, but they don't really, most people don't read what it is that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to help you. These are some of the things that we're going to talk about. I asked you in the abstract if we should pre-teach vocabulary, for example, how we should answer questions such as this one, if we should teach grammar deductively or inductively, and also when it's okay to simply not help our learners. Yeah, so these are some of the questions that, actually, I think all the questions that I asked in the abstract, and I promise I'm going to do my best to answer all of them. Yeah, so what I think about pre-teaching a vocabulary, I'm not going to assume anything. It's a lot of people, so I'm going to explain what is meant by pre-teaching vocabulary, and then what my opinion is on that. How to answer these questions of how do I say this, how do I say that in English in class. What I consider to be perhaps the most effective approach to teaching grammar, not only grammar, vocabulary as well, or anything else, but I'm going to use grammar as an example for the sake of time. And when it's okay to not help the learners. All right, so this is pretty much what I'm going to try to talk about this evening. But I'm going to start by mentioning Demenhai. I don't know if you're familiar with Demenhai. Demenhai is this really interesting idea. Jim Scrivener and Adrian Underhill, two of the most prominent writers in our area, came up with a decade ago or so, perhaps. And they were basically asking themselves and all of us in EOT the following questions. First, are our learners perhaps capable of more, sorry, can't type, capable of much, much more? Are our learners capable of much, much more? Have the tasks and the techniques that we use in class sometimes become rituals and ends in themselves? I mean, do we sometimes ask ourselves why it is that we do the things we do in class? Why it is that we believe many things that we believe? And are they really effective? Are they really useful? Do they really have an impact on students' learning? Then how we can stop covering material, just covering material. Like, for example, what is your objective for this term? To finish the pre-intermediate book, and actually focus on students' potential for deeper learning, I mean, to really learn something that they need and not necessarily what the course book authors thought that they needed at that level. And another question, and the last question we're going to address tonight, is what small adjustments we can make to what we do in the class to perhaps get students to learn a bit more. I saw Scrivener once. I had the privilege to see Scrivener once talking about Demenhai. And he talked about something that today I feel a lot too in CELTA courses sometimes. Not only CELTA courses, but in my own practice as well as a teacher. Just, yeah, you know, I did everything I wanted to do today. I mean, I checked exercises the way I think is the most effective way. And I explained grammar, and my students did controlled practice and freer practice. So all the teaching happened. But did any learning actually happen? I mean, what evidence do I have that students actually learned anything and that they left my class with more than they came with? Yeah, so I think this is how I understand this last question. How can we make sure that we get learning going and that we don't concentrate just on teaching, but that we concentrate on learning as well? Anyway, so first of all, I'm going to try and answer very quickly these 4 questions. Yeah, everything from a personal perspective, everything from my experience. These are my ideas. Most of them, when they're not, I cite and I mention whose ideas they are. And they're all open to discussion. Yeah, so you can disagree with absolutely all of them. I'm just trying to put some topics on the table for us to discuss and to think about. So the first One is, are our students capable of much, much more? My answer is yes. I think they are. They're capable of much, much more than we give them credit for. Curiously, here I typed the question correctly. Go figure. So for instance, do you think it's physically impossible to pronounce ED endings? I mean, is that why Brazilians say walked, talked, and loved? It's because it's really physically impossible to articulate the ED endings correctly? Or is it maybe because we are not correcting it enough or clarifying it enough? I'm not answering the question, by the way. I'm just asking you a question. Is it impossible, or is it perhaps uh, because we accept the loved, walked, and etc.? Yeah. Can students, I mean, physically pronounce have instead of heavy? Or is it really impossible to say have, to say five, to say 10 rather than 10, and seven rather than seven? I mean, is it physically impossible to pronounce them correctly? Um, well, my answer to these questions that I posed is, yeah, it's perfectly possible for them to pronounce these things correctly. So that, why is it, sorry, that they don't? Why is it that students say at the beginning of their courses, for example, they say, can you spell it? Rather than, can you spell it? I mean, is it impossible to get the students to say spell it? That particular use of the L is not even hard for Brazilians, thinking specifically of Brazilians, because we use the L the same way. I mean, connecting with a vowel when we say lata, for example. So it seems to me that it's perfectly possible to get students to say, can you spell it? But do we perhaps just give up? Because if we're giving up, I think it's better, because at least it's conscious. So it's better to give up than it is to just not think about it. Yeah, I think if at least we're thinking about it and we're giving up, it's a conscious process. All right, but I think at some point we just stop thinking about it. We just think that can you spell it is okay. And look, I understand accent. We should love our accent. I've never aspired to be anything more than a Brazilian speaker of English. But I do think that we can embrace our accent, and we can love the fact that we're non-native speakers, and we can um, continue sounding Brazilian, but without making mistakes with pronunciation that might get in the way of communication. So I do think we can get students to say have and five and 10 and 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 seven and I've done rather than I have done. And it's just a matter of not giving up. Yeah. So for instance, how do we correct these things? One possibility, one idea is elicit. Yeah. So instead of just correcting students by giving them the right form, to try and get students to produce the right form. So for example, heavy, I mean, is that correct? Or how do you pronounce this word again? Do we pronounce that final E? Yeah, we're getting students to notice these things and drilling and correcting on the spot. I mean, for some reason, teaching English communicatively, we've made correction on the spot wrong and ugly, and oh, it's going to break the student's heart, and they'll survive it. It's okay to correct on the spot. On the spot is not in the middle of the sentence, yeah, as Luis Otávio Barros always says. Correcting on the spot is not interrupting the student, it's waiting for them to finish that sentence and then drawing their attention, again, eliciting, drawing their attention to the problem that there was, and see if they can pronounce it better. Yeah. But not just, yeah, I understood, so let's just let it slide. That's how people go on saying heavy in new rather than will their whole careers, their whole student careers. Yeah? And I do think we can do something about it, but we have to do something about it. We cannot just expect these problems to take care of themselves. Yeah. Sorry, somebody said, sound that doesn't, yeah, there are sounds that don't exist in Portuguese. Of course, TH sounds, for instance, but that doesn't mean they're impossible to pronounce. And so we explain to students the articulation. They have to put the tip of your tongue between your teeth. And anyone can do that. It's just a matter of not giving up. Yeah. The second question, have the tasks and techniques we use in class become rituals and ends in themselves? I think so. One of the most important things for me working on CELTA courses or in teacher training, I mean, in any capacity, is, okay, so you had students compare their answers in pairs first, and then you nominated students to share answers. You nominated students to share answers with the whole group. Great. Why? Why did you do that? Why is it a good idea to get students to compare their answers in pairs first? And then when we're back together, to nominate students to, because even if it is good, even if what students did is what we believe to be the best, even if what the teachers did is how we believe to be the best way to do it, it's important that you understand why. Yeah, why it is that you're doing this, so that we're not just doing things because somebody told us to. Yeah? So why is it that we compare in pairs? Two reasons, two good reasons. One is peer teaching. That's to give the students a chance to help each other. In a classroom of 15 people, 20 people, 25 people, we cannot, unfortunately, give individualized attention to the learners. But if they're in pairs, they can give individualized attention to one another. So it's excellent. They can teach each other. Yeah? So I can explain to you as a student why it is that the answer is what it is and not what you answered. And the teacher perhaps hasn't even noticed. So this is one good reason to do that. Another good reason is to boost confidence, isn't it? So if I compare with my friend and the answer is wrong, and I share it with the teacher and I find out that it's wrong, I feel less bad because at least my friend got it wrong too. We got it wrong together. So there are very good reasons to do that, but we need to know these reasons. These reasons need to be clear. We cannot just, why is it that, for example, if I say during a course, I say to a candidate, I don't think you should have played the passage there. And the teacher actually has a good reason and he knows, but I played it a second time because of this, this, and that. Fantastic. I love that. He knows why he did it, or she knows why she did it. So that's great. We need to know why we do things in class. Yeah. I know that this is not really about fostering autonomy, but I really love this idea about the men high. Know why you do things. Don't do things just because they're in the book. Don't do things just because somebody told you in your CELTA. Don't do things just because the teacher's book tells you to, but understand why you do what you do. Drill. Why do you drill? Why? Yeah. Ask yourselves why. Don't let the activities just become an end in themselves. I'm going to go back to that later. How can you stop covering material and start focusing on students actually learning? For example, are all the texts in your course book relevant? Yeah? So are all the texts in the book that you use interesting for students? Are all the listening passages useful? I'm always discussing this with candidates, for example, on the courses. But you play the passage here, and the way the speakers talk in the passage is so artificial, is so unlifelike. I mean, it doesn't prepare students for anything. It's completely artificial. Why play it? Not because it was on the CD. I mean, it was the listening passage. It's a terrible reason. Yeah? So if you're going to do that, but you think the passage is completely artificial and silly, read the audio script yourself at a more natural speed. Yeah? But don't do things just because the course book has those things. Yeah? For example, you're teaching a grammar lesson. What's the most important thing about a grammar lesson? It's that students will be able to put that grammar into use in the end. So it's not what's going to make that lesson successful. It's not 25 minutes of explanation at the board. It's actually giving students a chance to practice. If they make mistakes, we correct and give them another chance to practice. But the most important thing is what students are doing, not what we're doing. Yeah? What we're doing is always secondary, always. What students are doing is always the most important thing, I think, anyway. Feel free to disagree. And then, listening and reading lessons. First I do a reading for gists, and then I do a reading for details. Great, but why? Does that really help? It does, actually. Reading for gist is very important because that's usually what we do when we're having a quick look at a text to see if we're interested enough in it to read all of it. Yeah, reading for details when we actually want to understand a little bit more, perhaps when we're studying or when we're trying to get informed. And by giving students meaningful tasks, we're also teaching them, even if we're not telling them, but we should, we're teaching them how to deal with a non-vocabulary, for instance. Yeah? So we're teaching students to, for example, I give students 5 questions to answer as they read the text. Maybe there will be 5, 6, 10 words in the text that they don't know, but it's not a problem because they can answer the questions. If the questions are good, that means they got enough information from the course, from the text, sorry, to be able to say, I understood this. I get this text, even though I don't understand all of the words. And one of the most important things about reading or listening in a foreign language is, I mean, I'm not saying it's the most important thing, but one of the most important things is working out meaning from context. So by giving students good tasks that will help them understand the text without having to focus too much on words they don't know, we're making them better readers. Yeah. But do students know that? Or do they think that the reading lesson is just a waste of time because they could be reading the text at home? Yeah. Do we tell them that? Do we know that this is why we do skimming and scanning? Yeah. So what is it that my students need to learn? What is it that my students need to learn to talk about? Is it really the speaking tasks that we have in the course book, or could we perhaps tweak them a little bit to make them more meaningful and to make them more useful for learners? Yeah, I absolutely love course books. I use course books. All of my private students use course books. My exam preparation students use course books. We use course books on CELTA courses. I am not here to trash course books. On the contrary, I think course books are wonderful, but they were not written for your student. They were not. Of course, it's impossible. On the contrary, they were written to be sold and used everywhere. So we have to make sure that our course book reaches out to our learners, yeah, rather than just use everything the author put in the book because, I mean, oh, here's the author, he knows best. No, they don't know best, not always anyway. So small tweaks and adjustments that we can make. So pre-teaching of vocabulary. I'm going to open the chat here. First, I'm going to explain to you what I mean by that. Yeah, but I'd love to see you participate if you're interested. What I mean by pre-teaching of vocabulary is, imagine I'm going to do a reading exercise or a listening exercise, and then I teach 3, 4, 5, 10 words from the passage that I think are going to be useful for students, are going to be important for students to better understand the text or to better understand the listening passage. Yeah, so basically before they start reading or listening, I will give them some vocabulary so that they'll be better equipped to face the passage. Let me see what Mirna wrote here. Exactly, but we don't have a choice, Mirna, do we? We have to adapt them. For example, one of my favorite books, I'm not going to say what it is, doesn't matter, but one of my favorite books, every single text, or 90% of the text, there are going to be words underlined, highlighted actually in the text. And there's a vocabulary exercise. Students have to match those words to definitions. It just so happens that 90% of those words look exactly like Portuguese. Yeah, exactly like Portuguese. So what's the point of doing an activity like that? They were not written having my Brazilian students in mind. It's a useless task. The book is not useless. The book is brilliant. But that task is useless, absolutely useless. Yeah. So I should not do it. I cannot do it. Yeah. I'm not going to say it, Carolina, because it's going to sound like I'm trying to sell books, and I'm not. And there are many course books I like. But the thing is, if you want to know, you can write me an email, I'll tell you. But The important thing is that we question the activities. I mean, will my students benefit from this? Yeah, is this, because these activities, I'm telling you, although they're in my favorite course book, they're useless, absolutely useless for Brazilian students 97% of the time. Yeah. Okay, my question is, what do you think about pre-teaching vocabulary? Should we do it? It's yes or no. Yes, we should pre-teach vocabulary. No, we should not pre-teach vocabulary. Kathleen says no. Anyone else? Come on, there are 100 people. Yes, 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 sometimes, depends. I love sometimes and depends. That's a great answer. No, yes, yes, depends, depends, yes, depends. Okay, good. There are lots of yeses in sure and okay. My answer to that question, of course, sometimes and depends, although, sorry, people, I'm not looking at the chat anymore, but thanks for participating. But the easy answer, which is the best answer, I think, is depends. Of course, it depends. But if I had to choose between yes or no at gunpoint, it would be no. No, don't pre-teach vocabulary. Because, again, as I said before, one of the most important things when you're reading in a foreign language is that I can work out meaning from context. So if it's a yes, no question, my answer would be no. My students have to learn to understand vocabulary in context, to ignore words that they don't know, to infer what they might mean based on context. So we pre-teach too much, we spoon feed. We help them to the point. I have a friend, I think I can say his name, Bjarne, who was one of my CELTA tutors back in the day. And he says, sometimes we pre-teach so much vocabulary, we might as well just give them the text in Portuguese. And it's true, it's true. It becomes a completely unrealistic task because whenever they're reading something real, whenever they're reading something that was not written for students, they're gonna have problems. Or they start reading a book, they're gonna look up in the dictionary absolutely every word they don't know. And that's gonna make the reading awfully boring. They're never gonna make progress and they're probably going to give up. So I want my students to understand that they don't need to understand all the words in the passage. Yeah? But does it depend? Going back to the depends. Of course it depends. Okay, 2, 3 words, important words to answer your question. What would be an important word for me? When do I pre-teach vocabulary? The text is about the life of emus. I have no idea why I keep giving this example. It's a ridiculous example. I've never read a text about the life of emus, but anyway. And my students don't know what emus are. I mean, how are you going to read a text that, no, it doesn't really matter, Ruth, if it's giving the translation or explaining. It's just like, don't prepare them in terms of vocabulary. Do a good lead in, prepare them in terms of context, but not really in terms of vocabulary. They don't need it. They don't need it. They don't need to understand 100% of the words. But okay, let me go back. I have to stop looking at the chat because I get sidetracked. I'll never finish. So if you have any other questions, I'll go back to them in the end. But I lost my train of thought. Right, okay. So I would teach emu because it's in the title. I would pre-teach a word that is in the questions. And I think they don't know the question. So I would either rephrase the question so that the question doesn't have that word, or I would pre-teach that word. So that is the depends for me. It's like a word that really is going to get in the way of the task. That word I would pre-teach. But 3, 4, 5 words, no. I want my students to be able to deal with the text and make sense of the text and answer the questions without giving them all the words I think they're not going to know, because I'm not sure I'm helping. I think I'm getting in the way when I do that. Anyway, that's my take on pre-teaching of vocabulary. Don't. Understanding, sorry, forget this in. Horrible. Understanding a foreign language invariably means dealing with noise. This is Penny Ur in 1984 in the book Teaching Listening Comprehension. But what she meant by noise is not noise, yeah? It's words you cannot understand. There will always be words you don't understand, always. My favorite hobby, the thing I like doing the most in life is reading. I love reading. and I read a lot. Well, at the moment, unfortunately, not as much as I would like, but I read a lot. Every book I read in English. Um, and I've been working with English for 2 decades. I've been studying English since I was 9, so for 15 years, because now I'm 24. Uh, and still, every page of every book, there will be words that I don't know. So if I didn't try to work out the meanings of those words in context, I would my life would be looking words up in the dictionary and possibly detesting reading, because reading would be impossibly dull and slow. Yeah. Anyway, continuing because there's still a lot. The second question then from the beginning, how do I say interessado in English? Right. This is a joke. I don't know. I know Rafael said that there are some people who are not Brazilian, right? I'm sorry. That joke only makes sense in Portuguese. But teacher, how do I say interessado in English? Se vir. Yeah? Se vira. Here's the dictionary. Find out. Look it up. Do we always have time for that? No, of course not. But it's very important that we teach students where they can find reliable information about the language, and that we don't just answer every question that they have. Yeah. Do your students know how to really use a monolingual dictionary and all the brilliant information that they can get from a monolingual dictionary? How the word's pronounced, how the word is used in a sentence, if the word has any dependent prepositions, and etc. Do they know how to Google something properly? How to use Google Ngram? How to use Youglish for pronunciation? Yeah, because they should. They should. Instead of just giving them the answers to everything, we should tell them where they can find reliable information and how. For example, if you want to see if it's more common to say, let's see, uh, warm coffee or no, tepid coffee or lukewarm coffee. I love these collocations. You can go to Google Ngram and do a search there for commonness, and you will see which of the two collocations is more common. If you want to see how New York Times uses different, if they say different than or different to, you can go to Google, do a search between quote marks. So between quote marks, you type different than, and outside of the quote marks, you type NYT for New York Times. And then you see how many hits Google finds. And then you repeat the procedure for different from. And then you'll see which one is the most common. But this is not obvious. Students, when they want to find stuff out on Google, what they do is they write like garrafa in English and they get the translation. Sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. I remember at the beginning of my career, I worked for a school where the homework included students translating sentences both from Portuguese into English and vice versa. And then one of the sentences was, this didn't happen only to me, this happened to all the teachers in the school. Eu como carne, and the student translated, I how meat. Because sometimes it's not even obvious that you should look a verb up in the dictionary in its infinitive form. They looked up conjugated verbs and obviously found the wrong bit of information. So of course we're going to answer their questions, especially when we're pressed for time, especially when it's related to what we're discussing in class. But we should also consider that sometimes the best thing we can do for them is not answer the question and show them where they can find reliable answers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sounds great if you're not behind schedule, but the thing is, do it every now and then. Teach them. This has to be part of the syllabus. Teaching students how to use, because look, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think most learning doesn't happen in the classroom. Most learning happens between classes. Students are really going to make great progress if they really do work between Monday and Wednesday and between Wednesday and Monday. It is the work they do between classes that will actually make a difference. We have to help them do that work. Yeah, teach them where they find stuff that they can trust. Yeah, rather than just do 2 hours and 30 minutes or 2 hours of practice every week with us, and that's it. Because then we know progress is going to take forever, right? So training the learner to become independent, training the learner to learn to learn is possibly one of the most important parts of our job. Yeah, rather than just covering content, covering content, covering content. Yeah. It's 2020. People have smartphones. I know I'm assuming, right? I know I'm assuming, but and some students don't. But that will depend, of course, on your context. But most people have access to the internet one way or another, and to devices, mobile devices, one way or another. So just telling students to put their phones away won't cut it. I mean, perhaps it's time we've found ways to get them to use the phones in a useful way, yeah, in class. Look it up and tell us. Yeah? Find out and tell us. Another thing about how do I say interessado in English? What do we do with words in isolation? Nothing. Don't do anything. So what is it that you want to say? Right. So it's to be interested in. And then because there's in, if there's a verb following, that verb is going to have ing. So we need to teach them the whole form, not just, interessado, interested, because the chances that they're not going to be able to use the word properly in a sentence are quite substantial. Yeah. Let me go. So inductive or deductive grammar. What is the difference? Hang on, I think I have a definition. I should have put the definition closer. Hang on, I'll go back. This is the definition. Deductive approach is basically, simply put, I explain to students the grammar and then they put it into practice. Yeah, so it starts with presentation of rules, followed by examples in which the rules are applied. Inductive approach, and it's quite clear which one I think works best, starts with some examples, and from those examples, students will infer what the rule is. This is Thornbury. And then these three writers also say, and I agree, that the most effective grammar teaching is probably going to be a combination of both. But the thing is, I think it's fair to say that most grammar teaching is done very deductively. So let me explain something here to you. Listen to me for 20 minutes, and then we're going to put these into practice. Yeah, and we need to involve students more. Yeah, so inductive or deductive. Imagine, sorry, I killed my jokes. Today we're going to talk about the present perfect. The present perfect is made up of blah, 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 blah. Might not be the best way to do it. Some areas of grammar might actually lend themselves better to more teacher-centered ways of clarifying, deductive, like let me give you some rules. But look at this. This is from a course book. Yeah, it's from a course book. Present perfect. A2 level. It's the first book in the series. The first book in the series. Yeah. Towards the end of the book, it's true, but it's the first. It's not the first if you consider the beginner book. Yeah. But it's still A1, A2, the very end of the first book of the series. First time students look at present perfect formally on the course, the very first time. There are pictures of films which I've removed, sorry. Can you match them to the books? So they match the movies, the films, or the TV series to the books. Yeah? Then there is a little dialogue. So this is the lead in. There is a little dialogue that in which I provide all the language I want to teach in a meaningful context. So instead of talking about isolated sentences, I give them the language in context. Yeah, see, it's a dialogue. People talking about movies. Yeah, have you seen it? Yes, I have. No, I haven't, etc. Then look at this. This is beautiful. Listen to and read the conversations again. Complete the chart for read. Students will complete that. And then look at this. Look at this and love this, because this is beautiful, I think. Look, it's, my dear student, severe. Find out what the rules are. Yeah, there you go. Answer those questions while I have a cup of coffee. Yeah, so I will have here my cup of coffee while you, oh, my mouse cursor disappeared. Hang on. Back. So the language analysis is done by the students. Yeah, of course, we're going to correct this afterwards, obviously. But first, I'm going to give the students a chance to work. And again, this is not a present perfect review. This is present perfect for the first time. What is the full form of read? I'm testing the form. If they know that this is have. How do you think have and haven't changed in the third person singular? They've never seen this as auxiliaries formally, but they've seen the main verbs when they studied simple present. So maybe they can guess that it's has and hasn't. Seen, read, and heard are irregular past participles. What are the infinitives? Watched and downloaded are regular past participles. What are the infinitives? When Tom says, I've what, look, this is meaning, this is the use of present perfect. I'm letting students find out. When Tom says, I've watched the first 3 seasons, do we know when he watched them? No, that's exactly what the grammar means. But instead of telling them, I give them questions that will lead them to find the answers. There's a very good chance that this is going to be much more memorable. This is the teacher's role. This is what you do while they work out the grammar. Yeah, you watch the waterfalls on your computer, obviously. No, of course not. We monitor, we help, we offer help. We're there, we're walking around, or in the present moment, we're visiting the breakout rooms and making sure that students are, that the students know what they're doing. Yeah, but you watch TV a little bit. Yeah, but it's very, very important that we let students try to work things out. They can, of course they can. And if they can't, we'll help, but they can at least try. Yeah. So this is more deductive. I saw somebody asking about the book Lima. I didn't mention, Lima was a friend of mine, Alvaro Lima, actually. He was the one who came up with the severe method. It's not a book at all. It was just a joke in the school. When he was tired, he said, you know, I'm just going to let the students do all of the exercises, severe method. But there's actually a lot of knowledge there, I think. That's very important to let students find stuff out on their own. And then, of course, after this, I am going to, as we say, systematize the grammar. I was using Ribeirão Preto board people's names, but now I'm not anymore because I don't have any more time. But I am going to focus on the form in the end, yeah, but always eliciting. Okay, so what's the form of read that we use here? Yeah, and what's the negative form? Yeah, and what's the question? So always trying to elicit from students rather than, so remember this verb, elicit. Don't tell them anything, elicit from them. You know, try to get from them rather than tell them all the time. Yeah? We've already done the theory. All right, so what does it mean then to foster autonomy? These are my last 2 slides, I promise. We're getting there, we're getting there. What does that mean? These are just little examples of things we can do in the classroom, okay? So, for instance, fast finishers. So students are doing a reading exercise. I've given the group 7 minutes. 2 students have already finished. Tell them, okay, dictionary. Look up 3 words you don't know and be prepared to tell us later what the words are. Yeah, because they're going to ask us later what the words mean anyway. So you can keep the fast finisher busy by teaching them how to find words on their own. Yeah, stop reteaching vocabulary, post-teach it. After you've explored the text, then you look back on the vocabulary. Yeah, so that can be really useful. Expand their vocabulary and then give them a chance to put this vocabulary into use. But not before the reading, not before the listening, to make it artificially easy and not really prepare them for real life. Yeah, remember that most of what we do in class, not all, but most, should provide students with rehearsal for real life. Yeah, they're not learning English to use it in the classroom. They're learning English to use it in the world. I mean, whatever purposes they have. But we need to prepare them for that. Yeah, not just for classroom use. Use answer keys rather than going over all the answers with them always. Yeah, students can be more independent. It's like, okay, you've done this exercise. You've done all the exercises in the workbook. Great. Here's the key. Here's the key. Severe. Here's the key. If you have any questions, if there are any answers you don't understand, ask me. Otherwise, you're in charge of your learning, not me. I'm in charge of guiding you. I'm responsible for guiding you. But Only you can learn. I cannot learn for you. I cannot do anything more than point you in the right direction, but you have to do the learning for yourself. Have students justify their answers. True, why is it true? False, why is it false? C, why is it C? Prove it. Where is it in the text? Yeah, so demand more from them. Yeah, what would you do if I weren't here? I mean, if I weren't here, how would you find out how to say porca? I mean, the one for parafuso in English, or I'm looking at the things I have around me. How would you learn how to say caneca if I weren't here? So find out, pretend I'm not here. Yeah, find out how to say it and tell us. If you cannot find it, I'll help you. If we're pressed for time, I'll tell them, but not always. Yeah? We need to elicit more from students. Have students correct themselves. Yeah, so instead of just giving them the correct form when they make a mistake, try to elicit the correct form from them. There are many correction techniques you can use. A very simple one, we typically call it zooming. So the student says, my mother liked to go to the cinema, and you say, your mother? So with a rising intonation there right before where the mistake was made, instead of just telling them, no, likes, yeah, which does not give them a chance to think about the error. I show them where the error was, and I give them a chance to correct. Yeah? Use marking codes for writing instead of giving them the writing back with everything corrected. Point out what needs improving and let them improve on it. Yeah? Elicit, elicit, elicit. Give less, elicit more. Yeah? Challenge them. What do you think? They ask you a question. What do you think? Can anybody help? Why is that? Oh, who knows? Yeah? How do you say interessado in English? Does anybody know? Can anybody help? What's the dependent preposition? Let them take charge. Yeah? Demand higher. Yeah? Heavy. How many syllables does that word have? No, it just has one syllable. Do we pronounce that E? No, so repeat after me. Right, now look at these three other words. Do you think they're going to be the same? So how do you think this one's pronounced? How about this one? How about that one? Yeah? And then you're teaching numbers, elementary. Look, I always tell CELTs, for example, you're teaching the numbers from 0 to 10. How many students out there don't know the numbers from 0 to 10, meaning of the numbers? Very few, very few. But how many of those numbers do they mispronounce? 7 at least. Yeah, they mispronounce 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So it's not just about meaning. They need to know how to pronounce these numbers. Even if they're not going to pronounce them perfectly, they need that for listening. Yeah, so that they can understand when somebody's giving them a phone number, when somebody's giving them a zip code, and somebody's giving them their credit card numbers. That's very important information. We want to understand that. But we never will if we think 7 is 7, and that 10 is staying, and that 3 is, I mean, all the possibilities that we tend to come up with. Yeah? Train the learner. Never give them words in isolation. Mark all the new words for stress so that you get them thinking about stress. Yeah? Ask them, is there a dependent preposition? What's the dependent preposition here? Yeah? Get them to think about this beautiful language that they're learning. Yeah. And I'm late, and I'm sorry, but thank you very much. It's been lovely to talk about this topic with you. You can see I'm quite passionate about it. I do think we need to get students to do more in class. Keep studying, as well, as Evelyn said. Continuous professional development. And I'm sorry, as it's done. Thank you, Rafael. Sorry, I talked too much and too fast. I'm going to drink some water now.
Igor, thank you very much. It is truly inspiring. I saw that you were able to address some questions while you were giving the presentation. I think it is extraordinary because people can interact, and many of the issues that were presented were covered by you. But I would like, we still have a few minutes. I would like to open for questions. I don't know if my colleagues have any questions that they collected from the Q&A, or if anyone here on the chat would like to ask any questions. We still have 6 minutes.
Yeah.
I do have many questions, but I would like to give people opportunities to talk to you.
This is my email address, people. Feel free to get in touch. Find me on Instagram, talk to me there. Always a pleasure to chat. But if you have any questions, I have a few minutes. I have a class at 9:30. You know, teachers. Yeah, I still have a class, but I have time now. It's Zoom. It's just where you go into another room, so I can leave at 9:30 and I'll still not be late. So if anybody has any questions.
Igor, I see that there are some questions coming up. People are curious to know what is the course book that you used as an example. I know you have just said that you prefer not to mention any course books here.
The one I used as an example, if I used this as an example, I have to say it because it's bibliography.
Yeah.
It's English font.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
And one of our participants, Ruth, she's asking about CELTA. She's saying that they do learn about pre-teaching. So
Yes.
if you want to clarify that for them, I think it would be useful.
You know, CELTA is not always exactly the same. We have the same syllabus. They're all extremely similar. But I think the most common suggestion regarding pre-teaching of vocabulary in CELTA is it's optional, but there is a tendency for pre-teaching of vocabulary to happen in CELTA courses. Yeah. What I am saying, that I'm suggesting that you don't, is not really necessarily CELTA syllabus. Yeah? It's my opinion, really, but it's always optional anyway. It's never mandatory, but I just think that we should do it rarely, yeah? Not always, as we tend to do.
Igor, if you allow me, I would like to ask you a question. We are talking about making students more independent. Do you think there is a cultural issue in Brazil? Because I see that many parents, or many families, they expect that us as teachers, we do as much as possible for students. So I'm quite sure that many families would not understand, but I love the severe method, by the way. I think we should adopt that in our schools, because I do believe students learn by doing. But how do you see, do you think there is a cultural aspect that might...
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. My bad.
No. I was thinking about that while you said, because I work at a school, so I do receive many parents, and there is a tendency that they always think that the teacher is not doing enough. So how do you think teachers can deal with that, can educate the families?
Yeah, that's, I think, a version of what we were discussing here. Look, I want your son to learn to think for himself and to do things on his own and to not depend on me or on you or on anyone all the time. But I do think there is a very strong cultural factor. Our lessons, especially in mainstream education, tend to be, I'm not saying that they still are everywhere, but they tend to be, and historically have been, very teacher-centered. Yeah, so anything that strays from that idea tends to be, they tend to be a little bit difficult to accept at first. But yeah, effecting change takes hard work. It's not easy. And it might involve training parents as well, not just students. Yeah, but it's very important that people learn to do things on their own, to do things for themselves and to not need help all the time. Yeah. But I agree with you. It's cultural. It's not easy. And it's about
it is cultural. I see that a lot in mainstream schools. So the school might have to give the teacher some support to overcome that situation. Igor, thank you very much again. I know you have a lesson in a few minutes, so you need to prepare for the upcoming lesson that you have. So thank you very much on behalf of BRAZ-TESOL, Ribeirão Preto chapter. It was a great pleasure. It is always a pleasure to hear what you have to share. You are one of the professionals that we have as a reference in Brazil. So it is a privilege to have you as our guest today. So thank you very much again for your presence and for this great talk.
Thanks. It was a pleasure to be here, really. And I'm looking forward to being able to be with you guys for real. Yeah, next year. Who knows? Take care, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks, everybody, for the interactions. And stay safe. Stay home. See you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Igor, bye-bye. I'll just share a last screen with the participants that we have here with us tonight. So please join us on social media. We'll give you more information on the following talks. Today we had the great pleasure to have Igor Cavalcante with us. And tomorrow, our talk will be focused on bilingual education and bilingualism. So we'll receive as our guest, Dr. Elisa Troncon. And the topic tomorrow is transitioning from language to bilingual teaching. So thank you very much for your presence. And I hope we see you back here tomorrow. Thank you very much and have a great night. Bye.
I would just like to share the CDs of our attendees.
Oh, thank you, Rafa. Thank you.
Can I share the screen?
Yes.
All right.
We'll see the cities that are present here today. Okay, so we have there Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, São Bernardo do Campo, Feira de Santana. We have someone from Timor-Leste, Avaré, Taubaté, Goiânia, Santa Maria, that's wonderful. Bagé, Jandira, Araraquara, Goiânia. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. We hope you are here tomorrow with us. Recife, great. Porto Alegre, Indaiatuba, that's wonderful. And again, it is something that technology can do for us. So thank you for joining our chapter, for the talk, for the amazing talk we had with Igor Cavalcante, and we see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Bye.